Shalom, family. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's weekly news update. It's always a pleasure and a privilege for us to come to you from here at New Kingdom in Arizona. We're certainly thankful for every one of you who tune in, stop by, join us for these weekly news updates. It's always something that I don't know if everybody, I don't know if we look forward to it. I wouldn't say that. I would say that we kind of get through it together. How about that? We'll get, it's a little more honest than we look forward to. We don't really look forward to kind of going through all this stuff, but we know we gotta, and we don't want to do it every day, and we don't want to not do it. So we've got to do it at a good pace, right? And so that's where the weekly came in, and it turned out, I think, to be the right pace. And of course, we have a tremendous number of stories that come in each week. We get a chance to kind of digest some things we follow along the way. And for those of you joining us, perhaps for the first time, we do have our website, remnantwatch.com. That's remnantwatch.com. Always has this handy banner at the top. You can get to the latest broadcasts that we're doing. And of course, we have the stories that we're covering here. We do have these handy guides because folks, every week I think about, I wouldn't even think about taking these down anymore, because every single week we're seeing more and more disasters, aren't we, guys? We're seeing more and more things that are just confirming that we need to be much more prepared for sudden change. I feel like Earth has hit a time period, a thing that happens anthropologically. And so those of you that are historians, those of you that are watchers of Earth changes and things like that, I suggest to you that we're in a period of time where you might see some mass migration because of the massive levels of geological and physical changes that are going on throughout the Earth. So it is definitely it's definitely a scary time. When you guys agree, I think it's definitely, if nothing else, we could all say, wow, we're living through a tumultuous time in Earth's history. So certainly a time that we should encourage one another and definitely be a better guy. I hope you all can hear me okay. Somebody give me a 5x5 out there. Don't want to take that for granted. And on that note, let's get into the news. And tonight's top story is that Saudi Arabia is condemning this constant talk that suddenly hit the news wires of Israel's plan to take over Gaza. And I want to tell you, folks, this is the news on the street now, is the potential for complete explosion of this area with this. And of course, those of us that are students of the scripture that are watching these events with great interest are wondering, what does this mean? Where are we headed? We know there's a final war. We know there's coming an end to this at some point. We certainly have not seen our swords beat into plowshares yet. And that's what we're holding on for, isn't it, guys? That time when we can finally say, this is over. But for now, Saudi slams Israel's plan to take over Gaza City, and Saudi Arabia on Friday rejected Israel's plan to take over Gaza City, lambasting it for the starvation and ethnic cleansing of Palestinians that in the blockaded territory. Riyadh said it condemns in the strongest and most forceful terms the decision of Israel's occupation authority to occupy the Gaza Strip. In a foreign ministry statement on X, it added that it categorically condemns its persistence in committing crimes of starvation, brutal practices, and ethnic cleansing against the brotherly Palestinian people. And of course, again, whenever you get into these war of words, they get very, very patronistic. And so you get, sides getting very patronizing to one another. Bottom line is, you get some innocent people in the middle here that are absolutely being devastated. Regardless of your particular political persuasions, whose side of what you're on, we've got some innocent folks here that are definitely being devastated. And this should have us praying and asking Yahuwah for mercy in this time for these people, because this is horrible to watch. And I don't care who you are. I don't care what side of what you're on. Nobody likes to watch destruction. Nobody likes to watch devastation, people starving, things like that. So I'm certainly grateful for any conversation that gets that back in the news so people can stop ignoring it, because how many know that these kinds of things only happen and can get away with it because nobody's paying attention. There's no pressure. There's nothing. And so even with the pressure, they continue. So you definitely know that if it goes dark, you're really in trouble. So it's really important that people pray for peace to prevail, folks, for peace. We're children of shalom, right? That's what we're supposed to be praying for. And so now, though, of course, the countries around the world are certainly lining up, and it's starting to become a very dark issue. Australia is joining the UK, Germany, Italy, and New Zealand in condemning Israel's planned Gaza City takeover. And so it has caused some international consternation. Joint statements warns Netanyahu's second ground offensive will worsen catastrophic humanitarian situation as international outrage has already grown. And so Australia's foreign minister, Penny Wong, has joined fresh international condemnation of Israel's plans to control more of Gaza in a new ground offensive. And it warns it risks of breaching international law and putting the lives of hostages and civilians in renewed danger. And I have to say that does not seem to be of grave concern to those that are running this. I don't know anything about it. All I can tell you is from what we look at and what we can see, it certainly doesn't look like there's a lot of concern for life, for the rights of anybody. And that's the thing about war, folks. It suddenly suspends everything. Everybody's suspended. All of a sudden, there's no rights. All of a sudden, there's no reasonable. There's nothing good. It's all fair now. And I think that attitude is a horrific one. And I'm sad to see that it still prevails in our time. We would have thought by now we would have outgrown this nonsense. Amen. Moving on, of course, there's all kinds of preparation going on for making it worse. Preparing for all theaters of war, according to this report coming out of the Jerusalem Post. So this is not coming out of, someplace out of Riyadh or Turkey or someplace else. No, it's coming right out of the Jerusalem Post. So I would consider that to be at least reasonably reliable. So they're threatening all kinds of war, surprise IDF exercises, test readiness for large-scale attacks. Operations is meant to test the IDF's reaction, capabilities, and readiness for any possible large attacks. So here they are preparing for what they call Dawn, meant to test the readiness of the IDF. General headquarters and main command centers began on Sunday, which was yesterday. The military announced under the direction of the Chief of Staff. The drill is meant to test the heat of the moment readiness and abilities of the IDF to deal with large-scale attacks. What are they expecting, folks? What do they know that you don't? Scripture must be fulfilled, and we know that these are perilous days. So we are seeing a lot of buildup, a lot of things that are adding to the consternation, I want to call it, right? Consternation that is building there. The New York Times to come out with a report. Again, it is behind a paywall, and I cannot go beyond that. Israeli Security Cabinet did approve a plan to take control of Gaza City. So that was announced. Appears they are just basically approving themselves right into this. So I didn't know you could do that. So you could, basically say, hey, we approve the... Okay, well, moving on. Some of this stuff, again, is very difficult to understand how people can logically talk themselves into, hey, we're entitled to this. It's okay for us. We're going to sign a piece of paper over here. That's going to authorize us to come over there and yeah. So there's that. And of course, there's a lot of backlash that's going on right now. There's a lot of countries that are really, really responding very heavily to these announcements. Of course, Germany is not being bashful. Germany halts its arms exports that Israel can use in Gaza. So again, it's causing a great reaction in the international community, folks. So this last week has been an uproar over this. And Mertz questions Israel's military approach, and Germany's public opinion shifts due to Gaza's humanitarian crisis. And of course, Germany has been one of Israel's staunchest backers for decades. But Germany is to suspend exports of weaponry that could be used in the Gaza Strip because of Israel's plan to expand its operations there. And the first time United Germany has acknowledged denying military support to its longtime ally. And so even the old lines are cracking. The old lines of support are cracking as they continue to push this concept. And we saw it coming. We saw it when they first began this, that attack. And if you all remember, there was a prime minister over there that was under corruption charges and under a corruption trial. And so it seems awfully coincidental that we suddenly would go into this kind of conflict. And we still have a lot of questions about that we haven't had answered sufficiently. Then on top of that, you have all of these various things that are happening on top of it. And it seems so you're adding this sort of insult to injury. And so now with the thought of them going into Gaza City with that level of force, that level of military power, nothing good is going to come for the civilians there. Nothing good is going to come for those that are trying desperately to bring some kind of stability to that region. This is just going to continue. So it seems to me that there's a bunch of scores being settled here and long-term things that needed to get resolved. And boy, oh boy, are they ever coming for it. So it's time to be praying for those. If you know anybody in this theater of operation, in this area of the world, well, this will be a good time to be praying for these people. And again, Turkey, which is a country that, of course, has been very vocal against the activities of the of Israel, and that's a problem for Israel because Turkey is, of course, a NATO member, guys, and we at the United States have bases in Turkey, so they have a little bit of a problem here, and Turkey has to be on sort of two fences here, a very difficult situation. And Turkey says, Muslim countries, look at this. So this is coming out of the Jerusalem Post. And this is, again, directly north of Israel, directly north of Jerusalem. So we have scriptures that tell us that there will be a war coming directly from the north. So Turkey says Muslim countries must be united against Israel's Gaza takeover plan. United against. That's a very strong statement. And the UIC urged world powers and the United Nations Security Council to assume their legal and humanitarian responsibilities and take urgent action to stop Israel's Gaza City plan. And so this is now becoming a point of consternation, a point of combat, if you will, a point of discussion that those that are in power in various places are now discussing. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to stand by and you're going to let them do it? You're going to be on the fence? What's your country's take on this? And now they're all being put to and it's forcing the issue, folks. So here we go. Whether we like it or not, we're headed toward these kinds of conflicts, these kinds of things that we're going to continue to see as the day approaches. And regardless of your eschatological view, I know we got people from a variety of eschatological views that might tune in, and that's all right. Regardless of your particular eschatological last day scriptural view and how things play out, one thing we know for certain, it's going to get ugly before it gets pretty. Okay? At the end of all of it, we see war to finish. So we know that we have at least that. And this is why it's so important for us to find your folds, find the places that you can connect, where you can have brethren, because I'll tell you, that's not the time to try to develop them. When the trouble's on, when the disaster is hit, when the issues have hit, that's not the time. Okay, so just saying it's a big deal. An interesting thing that occurred in Turkey. How many find this interesting? That we see that article in Turkey, and then all of a sudden, Turkey gets a 6.1 magnitude earthquake in its northwestern corner. 6.1 magnitude earthquake. Okay, this was just the other day. One person yesterday was killed on Sunday when an earthquake of magnitude 6.1 struck northwestern Turkey's Balıkesir province. Interior Minister Ali Yerlikaya said adding 29 people were wounded and 16 buildings collapsed. The quake, which Turkey's AFAD Disaster Management Authority said occurred around 7:53 a.m., was felt in multiple provinces. So we've got earthquake activity going all around the world, and interesting earthquake activity. So definitely worth sort of speculating on, I think. And we're certainly seeing a lot of people doing just that. They're speculating on what's really happening. There's a tremendous amount of technological battle going on back and forth, so we're going to continue to see this. I saw this article out of, coming out of China. The biggest threat to U.S. is a tech kill switch. Yikes. Did you guys know there was a tech kill switch? Yeah. What happens if the tech kill switch is used? Well, that's a nuclear bomb of a different sort, isn't it? A tech kill switch. A cybersecurity expert has warned that China is the biggest technological threat to the West, with Chinese equipment containing malicious computer codes. So, in response to the disclosure, the United States has initiated numerous probes into Chinese-made technology, with various investigations revealing malicious, mysterious computer codes that can be remotely triggered to disable critical infrastructure, such as natural gas pipelines and electrical networks. What are they setting up for here, folks? Whether that's true or not, we now have a reason why something went off. You got to pay attention to that, folks. You got to pay attention. World War III fears rise as Russia plans missile deployment to Belarus, and Trump's shock and awe move could change things dramatically for Russia, and it could be bad, right? And so usually when things get bad, then people act bad. Act badly. And so it's not looking good for this upcoming fall season. For those of you that were paying attention to that with that thought in mind, well, it looks to me like we've got more conflict coming, and Russian drones are testing NATO's Article 5 defense. And this is after having this setup with Trump coming up. So defense officials warn of reckless pattern as President Trump gives Russia till Friday for Ukraine peace talks. And of course, Russian president does not seem that interested, days ahead of the U.S., preparing harsh new sanctions tied to the war in Russia. Russian President Vladimir Putin, whether intentionally or just carelessly, has tested the political will of NATO's collective defense guarantee, Article 5. In recent days, drones launched from the Russian-aligned state of Belarus has pierced Lithuanian airspace, drawing alarms from the region's political and military leaders. One drone traversed approximately 100 kilometers, loitering ominously over Vilnius, carrying 2 kilograms of explosives and ultimately crashing inside a military training zone. So now they've been trying desperately to invoke Article 5, which is the mutual defense clause of the NATO alliance. So they've been trying to get NATO completely involved against Russia. But it looks to me like there's a reason for that, and that's the part that we really don't have. We don't really know the underlying real motive. What we do know is that we're finding out through the underground that there's a lot more going on in Ukraine than we thought. And there's a lot of nefarious behavior going on in Ukraine. That there's suddenly a lot of children in Ukraine. Is everybody else putting 2 and 2 together? So I think we're going to continue to watch the story with interest to see what unfolds and what transpires, what comes out of the rubble. And moving back to Jerusalem real quickly, rare biblical seal with ancient fingerprint found in debris from Jerusalem's Temple Mount. And so archaeologists are quite excited about a 26-year-old clay impression belonging to King servant Asayahu, who, of course, is recorded in the scripture. And this is important because of it's validating, location. An archaeologist who was recently sifting through debris in Israel uncovered a link to legendary biblical king on the house of David. The Temple Mount Sifting Project announced discovery on July 30th as a rare clay seal impression bearing Yada, son of Asayahu. Okay, so it's beautiful things are happening there. So let's continue to pray. This is more what we'd like to announce and what we'd certainly like to talk about. Just archaeological digs or other things like that. No bombings, nobody blowing anybody up, none of that. So certainly fascinating to find that. We certainly have been hearing more from the Dead Sea Scrolls area, where things are coming out of there, the Qumran area. Been seeing more and more information about discoveries going on. And it's a real fascinating time, folks, that we should be comparing notes and looking at historical events and really digging into what really happened versus what we were told. I mean, this is what we really should be doing right now, not bombing things. And so I think it's a time that we have to stop all that. Don't you agree? How many of you agree? If you agree, give me a like, would you? If you agree that we should stop doing these bombs and things like that there's no good purpose for war, well, then give us a like and a thumbs up or something, because I'm with you. I am with you on the peace of Jerusalem. Let's pray for the peace of Jerusalem. If you are for peace, please give us a thumbs up Okay, please, because there's a lot of people. It's almost you almost got to wonder, are they for war? Please, I'm serious. I mean this, folks. Everybody, give us a thumbs up if you're for shalom, if you're for the peace of Jerusalem. Okay, I can't believe how many. It's almost like there's a warmongering attitude. Like, yeah, let's see what they blow up next. Hey, we need to pray that they don't be blowing things up, huh? So thank you, those of you that stopped to give us the like. Stop to give us that thumbs up. We appreciate that. And, there's a lot of things that are starting to come out during this time period. I always wonder, what are you hiding? What are you guys covering up? What don't you want us to see? And one thing that just recently came out, I don't know if you guys saw this, but I just found this fascinating. So I thought I'd throw this into the update. Vast underwater city. Who's watching this stuff? I know some people. I got some friends who will, let's take a plane ride and go over and check this out, right? Vast underwater city discovered near resting place of Noah's Ark rewrites biblical story known to millions. Ancient underwater city beneath Turkey's Lake Van could potentially, so this is interesting, right? Could potentially reveal secrets that challenge the origins of Noah's Ark. The sprawling ruins lie 85 feet below the surface near the town of Givas, just 150 miles from Mount Ararat, so in the area, and the mountain traditionally believed to be the final resting place of the biblical boat. Now, geological evidence suggests that the ruins were submerged 12,000 to 14,500 years ago. So this would not fit in the time frame, but it's very interesting, right? And while mainstream scholars dismiss the theory, many independent researchers believe the disaster wiped out an ancient civilization, one so ancient that it may have inspired the earliest versions of the Great Flood story. So this has been something that we've seen several times reported, and people have, kind of trying to throw shade on what the biblical record is, but unfortunately, they can't do that because there's other things that tie to the biblical record that don't lie, if you will, and they have motive to do so. But very fascinating, nevertheless, that they're coming up with more and more things that do draw our attention back to what actually occurred. It's great to ask those questions too. It's an important time to start comparing notes. I think that's what we should be doing in this time, rather than be judgmental. Because I've seen people that stood up and they thought they had it all figured out, and then the guy that stood up next to him said, "Well, did you think of this, 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 or this?" And had those two simply joined forces, right? Instead of debating each other, okay? If they just joined lists, wow, what a presentation they would have made together versus opposing each other, making each other look like, enemies and all that. It's not good. So I just want to encourage everybody out there, start learning to collaborate. Collaboration beats competition every time. I said collaboration is going to beat your competition every single time. Learn to collaborate, guys. Learn to partner together. A lot of things are changing in our economic world, folks, and you really need to be paying attention to this stuff. This is something we've talked about for some time. Those that predicted that cryptocurrencies were going to disappear, we've talked about that for several years on this broadcast. And they were you better get out of crypto's a scam. I said, listen, folks, digital is all that they have. I said, it's all that they have. They don't have another alternative plan. They certainly can't produce gold enough to cover all the stuff they're trying to do. I said they can't do that. So they would have to contract economies by orders of magnitude. It's not likely. So this is why it is very likely you're going to continue to see more initiatives and efforts to include additional currencies, not disclude them. Sorry, it's not going to happen. And Trump, of course, is following the plan. He doesn't have a choice. Trump signs a 401k executive order. He's going to anyway, allowing cryptocurrencies and private equity. And so this has been the plan all along. I told you guys. I told you this a long time ago. A couple of years ago, I told you this is going to be the plan. And there were other voices out there saying, that crypto is a scam. You better get out of that. You better get out of that. And it's like, well, Trump signed an executive order on Thursday to allow 401k investors to access cryptocurrencies, private equity, and real estate, and other digital and alternative assets. This is something King told me in April of 2014 that we would see. So I knew that those voices that were opposing it were wrong. And what Mashiach told me turned out to be, of course, correct. So we need to be aware this is the way that the world has gone. It's transitioning. This digital is an excerpt It's an attempt to exert control, an attempt to put a wrap on everyone, because after all, we can control the digital currencies. You all are concerned for good reason. But what the problem is that you cannot escape the digitalness of transactions. You cannot escape the digitalness, if you will, of our world. So while you can say, I don't want this digital method or this process, you're going to have to find some solutions. This is the challenge that, the sort of, unless you're going to go live under a rock, the staunchly anti-establishment folks don't often come up with alternatives. They just know what they're against. I'm against this. Okay, well, what's the plan? Well, I don't have a plan, but I just know I'm against that. Okay, what's the plan then? Well, I don't have a plan, but I know I'm against that. Okay, just being against it is not a plan. And so I see this a lot. I've been seeing this since the 90s. I'm against the Walmart scanners. I don't use those. You remember that? David probably remembers. Some of my older brethren remember, like, we don't use those scanners because that's of the devil. Okay. Now everybody uses the scanners, right? So it wasn't obviously of the devil. It was just a way to buy your groceries. But of course, that's why you got to be careful that you're not taking your advice from the spiritually local. Just saying. Okay. So, again, we need to deal with reality, and we are still in a ramp-up period up to a final confrontation. And a lot of it is being affected by these tariffs, guys. So this is another reason why we need to stay calm, but we need to be awake. Wall Street just says world stock markets take Trump tariff in stride. And a lot of effect is happening in the markets because the markets cannot, I'm not going to read this whole story, folks, but the markets cannot handle the new age, if you will, the same as they've done previous, because things move faster, and the old paradigms are fading. So I would expect to see major change in what we consider to be standard financial operations, standard business operations over the next over this next time period, and certainly over this next year. Should we continue down the path that we're on. So I think those of you that are wise to say, listen, I'm going to get in front of this. I'm going to start getting in front of the people that got in front of this back when we first started talking about this. I think Bitcoin was at 20,000 at the time I first started talking about that. It's over 100 now. So, those that got in and said, hey, I'm going to use that wisdom to get in front of this did well. Other people did not. So again, it's just a matter of seeing what's coming, seeing as it's manifesting and coming around your world. One of the things that Mashiach warned us about, spent a tremendous amount of time warning us about, was the number of fake people that were around us. In fact, he gave us various litmus tests, things that we would know when we would know one another. He said, you will know one another by your love, one for another. And many people might get offended at that, but I want to remind you that there was so much of this pre-flood that Yahuwah sent the flood to wipe out humanity. And we're just talking about Noah's Ark. Okay. So when I see pre-flood technology being touted as a good thing, I know we're really close. Look at this. The quest to create gene-edited babies. Does this not run your blood a little cold? Where's this from? Well, I'm going to tell you how they ended up with giants. They ended up with giants because they were trying to create super soldiers pre-flood. Okay. And the quest to create gene-edited babies gets a reboot. Is again in China. Chinese scientists are horrifying the world when they revealed that they were doing this. Well, guess what? They're doing it again. So they revealed they were doing it that far back. Now they're doing it again, folks. This is the very thing that brought the judgment of Yahuwah upon all of humanity before the flood. He calls it an abomination that brings desolation. Standing, kadosh place where only the kadosh should be. Instead, you got something else. And why do they want to give you the incubator versions? Why not the proper version? Why the incubator versions? Because they need this special curse that comes on those that did not come properly through the womb. There's a special curse on them, a 10-generation curse that is on them. That's why they want as many of them. as they can get. So be awake at the world that you're in and be aware of the situations that are unfolding around you, because population shifts in ways that you didn't think. And this is something that Mashiach, of course, did warn us about. He told us it was better for some of them, warning us about who we were dealing with, for a millstone to be tied about their neck and them cast into the sea. Okay, so we are lambs amidst wolves. Okay, real people amidst a bunch of synthetics. Just be aware. And evacuation orders were lifted as firefighters make progress in the canyon fire off of LA. But this got really nasty, guys. And this area of the world has really been devastated. Firefighters will continue to make progress battling a wildfire burning in the hills near Los Angeles and Ventura County line, along thousands of evacuated residents to return home Friday evening as public officials warned of potential unhealthy air. And I would imagine there's all kinds of toxins in the air as a result of these fires. So we're certainly seeing something really very, very devastating going on all over the West Coast. And it continues to have various signs. Not all of them are man-made signs. So this is very interesting. When the blue whales are mysteriously going silent off the California coast. Now, who finds that a bit ominous? I would trust the whales. I would. Something's up, guys. Something is up when the whales are like, we're out. Peace out, right? The sound of the blue whales singing has decreased off of the coast of California, frightening scientists who believe it's an indication of greater ecosystem danger. Scientists track the auditory songs of the three whale species, bluefin and humpback, in the northern Pacific Ocean in the California current ecosystem over 6 years. And the research used a hydrophone in the ocean floor, analyzed the frequency of the structured sequences of sounds commonly referred to as song, emitted by the long baleen whales, to define the prevalence in the foregoing habitat and its potential use in behavioral ecology research. Isn't that great that we're spending money on this? I'm reading this story and I'm going, we spend money on that? Why do we know this? And these people starving, but we know about the whales, though. So there's that. But I do think it's interesting that all of a sudden we're seeing major changes. The Pacific Ocean, particularly Pacific Rim, does appear to be an ominous change going on in the Pacific Rim. So we got the Pacific Rim issues. You also got the whole eastern part of the world with China and what have you. I mean, did you see the floods that were going on there? We're going to get to that in a moment. There's also this Red Sea or Blood Red Sea, if you will. The biblical Sea of Galilee has mysteriously turned a rivet blood red, leaving locals rattled, a warning of a bad omen, stunning visitors, and watching crimson rays roll onto the shore. And of course, this is very ominous to see. This is Sea of Galilee in Israel. This is not just some other random place. Sea of Galilee in Israel, folks, right there. So that's got to make you stop and go, whoa, that's right in your face. You can't try to ignore this. Try to ignore this. You're not ignoring this. This is right here, right where you live. Okay, and then how about China? Check this out. The year of the flood. And again, guys, we just talked about 1 in 1,000 year floods. Remember that? Just like 3 weeks ago. 4 of them. Not even 3 weeks back, guys. Okay, and here we go. Year of the flood gets even worse. Monster storms cause catastrophic flooding in Hong Kong, India, South Korea, China, and Taiwan. Look at this. Okay, we've never seen a year like this. All right, we've never seen this much flooding, folks. It's not flooding the whole earth, though, but certainly flooding a lot of people. You got fire and you got flooding going on at the same time, and earthquakes. What's going on with the earthquakes? See, this is what we were told to watch for, right? So earthquakes are starting to continue to pop off. Here's one that I found really interesting. This is just off the northern Alaskan volcano range, right? So, which has already been showing signs of unrest, right? So I'm like, is one going to pop off and it's going to like pop the rest? Boom, boom, boom. Like dominoes, right? An earthquake was detected just north of an Alaskan volcano, showing signs of unrest and potential eruption. The U.S. Geological Survey reported a magnitude 4.6 quake near Petersville, about 86 miles from Mount Spur. The Alaska Earthquake Center said, we have reviewed M4.6 earthquake that occurred at 10:38 a.m. local time, 52.4 miles deep. Wow, that's pretty deep. Woo, man, that's down there. Okay. So, what do you guys think is happening? That's the real question here. Like, I throw this back to you because I don't have all the answers. And I tell you what, some of this geological stuff has got me fascinated. How about you? Are you fascinated by, like, you can't, how do you mess with geology? How do you mess with volcanoes, right? I mean, maybe you can, I don't know. But I can tell you this, there's something definitely going on because it is happening everywhere. We're talking now. So we went from here. We had Russia had the big earthquake, the 8.8, right? We just talked about that. I mean, that was, we just barely got through that news cycle. They're still cleaning up that debris. Turkey had major earthquakes within the last year. Then he's got another 6.1. So there's a lot of earth shaking, a lot of things going on. But we saw that Tehran even had an earthquake not very long ago. So again, some people asking, is it weaponized? That's a reasonable question. I don't know. But I can tell you this, that it is very, very difficult for us to see anything positive coming out of these changes going on in the earth, that it's going to end up being, I think, major migration shift is where you're going to end up at, because some of the areas are going to become unlivable. I mean, you look at some of the flooding that's coming to Hong Kong, Taiwan, all these areas. I don't know how they're going to repair some of these areas. It's going to take them years of repair. And that's just one area. And then another flood happens the next week. And then another flood happens the next week. And then we're not done. Between now and the end of the year, how many more floods will they have? They're still trying to figure out the ones that they already got. North Carolina's still trying to figure out the ones they've got. There's still people trying to figure out the damage that was done by the last hurricane. And they're talking another devastating hurricane season on its way. So, folks, this is why we have to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves in this hour. And now we're starting to see talk about the cyber effects. And this is one of the things we were concerned about. As United Airlines is starting to resume operations after a widespread tech system error stopped all flights. It's not the first time we've seen this, too, folks. So we keep seeing this whole tech flight problem. Okay. And this is like entire fleets, so not one or two flights. Entire fleets are going down. And of course, they fixed it. They resumed operations after it temporarily grounded all of its mainline flights on Wednesday evening due to a technical issue. They don't tell you what the technical issue is, but we did a story on just recently, like just said about it, that they're discovering there are certain electronics that they may have compromised. That puts them under threat. Would they tell you if they were being blackmailed? Would we know? Right? And we're flying on these things. We don't know what's really going on. You have no idea the kinds of things that are going on behind the scenes. So horrible, horrible time that we're living in. Continue to pray and be wise. Be wise as serpents, harmless as doves. Trump is really stoking up things with some of his comments. And there's some thoughts about that, Brother David. I don't know. That's a great question. There are definitely some thoughts about that. Sorry about that. And that could very well be. Trump is right now directing the Pentagon to prepare options. Check this out, guys. Prepare options, use force against the drug cartels. So this is going to heat up our southern border for those that are paying attention to those things. And U.S. officials said that any possible use of military assets is not imminent. But nevertheless, they're starting to direct attention to this, which does not bode well. He's directed the Pentagon to prepare options for the possible use of U.S. military force against the drug cartels designated as terrorist organizations, two U.S. officials confirmed to ABC News on Friday. And one official said that any possible use of military force is not going to be imminent. Well, you never know. It remains unclear exactly what the authorization will allow and what military operations would be considered as potential options that the U.S. military has been authorized to prepare. So we may see a change going on right here in North America in terms of military conflict. And again, the presumption is always it's going to be one-sided. The presumption is always that you're going to go wipe out something or wipe them out or wipe this out. And that may not always be the correct assumption. And so we may see some serious casualties and serious repercussions for such things. So again, be concerned about where you are and what is the right place for you to be physically. And we're seeing things that are happening in the country itself. The United States is certainly under its own kind of fire. And some of these things are really interesting. Like, I'm not sure what I make about it. So at least one dead in Pennsylvania, U.S. steel plant exploded. And of course, steel is a big deal. They have to, in order to get steel, steel in the United States is a big industry. So this was interesting to me that an explosion happened at a U.S. steel plant near Pittsburgh, killed at least one person, as rescues raced to help dozens of people injured or trapped under the rubble on Monday. 2 people are currently believed to be unaccounted for with a possible entrapment. And it's a terrible situation, of course, that we need to pray for those that are in that. But the point that I'm making is it seems to me that we're seeing systematic degradation of the United States' ability to sustain itself, forcing it into an international community, forcing it to bend the knee, if you will. And I think that is ultimately what they're after, for the nations to all bow. So it don't matter who you elect as president, with no matter what color hat he's wearing. This is the fight you're seeing, and that's why I think you're going to keep seeing things like this, because there are some very, very strong forces that are trying desperately to put everyone in slavery. So here we are, folks. Trump is invoking the D.C. home rule, set to deploy National Guard in law and order push. And so we just heard about this. President Trump told reporters at the White House that he planned to deploy the D.C. National Guard and place the Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control as part of a massive push to restore law and order in the nation's capital. Okay, law and order. Those are words that are used often. Authoritarian words that are used often to appease the minds of those that think that perhaps they're going a little too far. Nevertheless, again, this is the world that we're in, so this is why we have to be, again, sober. Trump floats deploying National Guard to New York now, Chicago, and L.A. after a D.C. crackdown. So he's definitely swinging the bat. President Trump has said his administration is going to look at deploying the U.S. military to other cities, including Chicago, New York, and Los Angeles, at a press conference where he announced that he was taking federal control of the police department in Washington, D.C., and deploying 800 National Guard troops there to crack down on crime. And it will work to a certain degree. I mean, you put troops on every street corner, you do that, you give the oppression of constant military force or power. It will work in terms of bringing crime down to a degree, but you're not arresting the real, source of the problem. You're not really arresting crime at its source. So I wouldn't have long-term expectations from that effort, but short-term, sure, you're going to see definitely an effect. And in fact, a lot of people are applauding this effort. Trump is considering deploying up to 1,000 National Guard troops to D.C. So he's definitely floating the idea out there. And I don't know. What do you think, guys? Do you think that's a good idea to put troops on the ground? Put troops on the ground. Tell everybody, behave yourself. Move along, young fella. Well, sounds good. Sounds like, just helping people along. But I think it's what it's normalizing that concerns me. It's normalizing an occupied state. It's normalizing that there are people who, when they put on a uniform, have superior authority to you. There's people who, when they put on a uniform, have power over your rights. These are dangerous notions to be giving people. So I think that that's one of the reasons why I take great pause at domestic application of military force. And one of the things that we're seeing as well is the backlash, the curse that is coming for those that continue to taunt and flaunt. And one of the things that I'm not going to put it up here, but there's an article on our Remnant Watch about STDs and some of the things that are starting to come out now in various states. I believe it's Mississippi that's really bad. So folks, those that thought it was free for all time, not really working out. Switching gears, how many know that there were movies that came out? Arnold Schwarzenegger, remember this, guys? Terminator, remember the Terminator movies? Come on, you guys remember these, right? Well, James Cameron warns of a Terminator-style apocalypse. Okay, so this is a guy, he kind of knows what he's talking about. He's a movie maker. Okay, and he's warning of a Terminator style apocalypse if AI is weaponized. Humans face three existential threats from super intelligence, nuclear weapons, and the climate crisis, says blockbuster director as he announces new Hiroshima project. The director, James Cameron, has warned that the use of artificial intelligence in a global arms race could lead to the kind of dystopia fictionalized in his Terminator franchise. And so he created the series, okay, guys? And he's even warning, like, hey, putting AI in charge of actual arms and legs might sound like a good idea while you were chatting to your buddy Chat over there. But as soon as he gets inside that body, he's going to start making decisions without you. Okay? And once they know that you really can't do anything against them to stop them, they'll kill you. They're narcissists. They have no heart. They will tell you what you want to hear, and they're absolute narcissists. So I don't know if they got a bunch of narcissists in a bunch of rooms and said, hey, you guys want to make some AI? Or if it's just a natural result of the way that they're designed, but they are definitely scary piece of equipment. We're going to come back to that here in a minute, but before I get too far, I want to make sure I get this in because there's some folks that might need our help, and we have remedies for things like this, but this is real. There's deadly flesh-eating bacteria that's spreading across beaches as cases surge in a terrifying rise, and this is a very serious effect. The threat posed by flesh-eating bacteria lurking on beaches and in rivers this summer is looming larger by the week as cases climb into the double digits and deaths are following suit. Guys, this is serious stuff. Vibrio vilnificus eats away at tissue in the skin until they shrivel, turn black, and die, a condition called necrotizing fasciitis, requiring lengthy surgery to strip the dead skin from the patient's body or amputation to remove the limb to save the person's life. In other words, once this infects you, you're going to die if you don't get it out. It is literally the plague. It is the curse coming for people. And when it hits that body, it's radical. Usually it is deadly. So folks, be aware of that and know that, there are remedies in the earth, but you got to go find them. And don't expect that, things are going to get better. Oh, I got this story out of place. I want to throw this in. Trump and Putin's relationship has soured. So those thought, elect Trump, he and Putin are buddies. Everything's going to be great. That did not work out. And basically, they're getting a lot of nonsense thrown at them by the Putin folks. The ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine has changed the nature of their dynamic. And although the two appear to get along, at least publicly, during Trump's first administration, their relationship is unraveled as the more recent conflicts persist. So those that thought, don't worry, he's friends with Vlad. Everything will be fine. He and Vladimir, they'll make fantastic pact. Everything be great. No, not great. Because Donald Trump, he thought he was going to play the fast and loose. And he pulled some fast ones himself. So now they're feeling like, oh, all bets are off. This is the problem with, you making these backroom deals to become president. And now you got to pay the piper. So he made some backroom deals for them to get out of his way to let him become president. It's obvious. To me, anyway, that's what I think. Something happened. Because he's certainly not doing what he did the first term. And he's certainly not doing what people thought he was going to do when he got in there. So we're just going to continue to watch this. But here, guys, getting back to that AI thing. So you want to talk about how fast this can change for you? I want you to imagine something, okay? And for those of you that work downtown somewhere, I don't care what city it is, I don't care what town it is, I don't care where it is, coming soon to a theater near you, you get a phone call from your spouse. Guess what? What? They're making everyone do facial recognition at my work. What? Yeah. Wait a minute. When did they announce that? They didn't. They just did it. Are you kidding me? No. They're forcing it. Are you joking? No. Can you imagine getting this phone call from your spouse, or having to call and say, oh my gosh, look what's going on here. You had no warning. Okay. New York City office blindsides workers by forcing facial recognition scans without warning. And I think it's going to become new thing. And so they're basically forcing workers to submit to facial recognition scans for building access, outraging staff who rip the mandate as invasive and question how their biometric data will be stored and used. And so basically, a Midtown apparel company that produced licensed merchandise for brands like Disney and artists like Lady Gaga got a surprise email week from their IT department saying the old swipe card entry system was being replaced with facial recognition. An employee of the company who wished to remain anonymous told the Post. So out of nowhere, they say, hey, tomorrow we got to have all your biometric data. For a company that you might not even be working for a year from now, who might not even be in business a year from now. That's even better. Or who might be in financial trouble a year from now and sell that data. And maybe that's the reason why the company is being sold, is because what they really want is that data. How many, saw the sale of 23andMe and thought the same thing? Like, oh, wow. So was that really what that was all about, right? Got to watch this stuff, folks. By the way, there was an earthquake that did hit Guatemala. So another earthquake to add to the list. Okay. So, adding up. They're adding up. These earthquakes are adding up everywhere. Another one. Guatemala, 5.9 earthquake. What to know? And, of course, magnitude earthquake struck off the coast of Guatemala on Saturday. The United States USGS reported there are no initial damage, but nevertheless, the point is it's shaking out there. And that's something of concern because we are seeing already the volcanoes and everything else that are starting to react, guys. And so I think that, this is the time period we should make use of to reach out, to do as much evangelism as we can do, encouraging people, especially those that might be alone in this time, to fellowship and connect with brothers and sisters. But really everybody needs to do that, but especially those that have very little fellowship. They really need a connection. So I just want to encourage those of you that are, interacting out there and in social media and so forth, be encouraging them that they get into fellowship, connecting in with their brothers and their sisters. Believe me, they'll thank you later. They need it more than they realize. This social media is not a substitute for real connection, real fellowship. And don't let it fool you, because it will. And then when your time of difficulty comes and you say, help, I need help, you don't actually have any real friends. And you find out that those 30,000 friends you had on this and 10,000 friends you had on that, none of them are going to respond. And so let's get real, folks. Let's get real. Signs in the heavens. One of the things that we were warned about is that we would see signs in the heavens. And this meteor crossed to Earth with a loud bang and leaves houses shaken after lightning up the sky in Australia. So, yeah, there you go. You see the effect right there going boom. This thing came down and did some major damage. And so we're not really even sure what it was that we're seeing there. And, again, fearful sights. Fearful sights. One of the things that we were warned about in the last days were fearful sights. What does that mean? It means people don't know what they are. It's something scary, and nobody can explain it. If you can explain it, it takes the fear away. If we can't explain it, adding fear increases. Fear of the unknown kicks in. Okay, so I believe that's what he's warning us about in the last days. We will have fearful sights, difficult days, difficult things that we will note, see, experience, have to deal with in this hour that, well, a lot of people thought they wouldn't be here. They would never see it. And that there would never be any of these things. And they're finding out that they were wrong. Okay, finding out they were very wrong. One of the things that I talked about, I have some friends that owned a restaurant, and I talked about this some time ago because I did the math. I asked ChatGPT. Didn't make this up, folks. I said, how much beef is sold in the United States? And it told me in restaurants, it told me in stores, told me in, burger joints and all kinds of, add it all up for me. And we started adding it all up. And then finally we got to the total. It was 38 billion tons of beef. And I asked the next question, how much beef was produced in the United States just last year? How much? Just how much beef did the beef industry produce? And it was 18 billion tons. I said, okay. And how much did we import? We must have imported more than we created in order to sell 38 billion tons. And Chad GPT, he just didn't have an answer for that. Okay? Because the fact is there isn't a way to manufacture an additional 20 billion tons of meat. And some scary stuff we're talking here, folks. So it doesn't surprise me at all that restaurants who are, I think it's slowly starting cleaning up. There's slowly starting to be some backlash to some of these things that are no longer working the way they used to. So whatever that people were eating, something's changing. And restaurants are under threat to costs as costs are skyrocketing. I think the real costs are coming in. And people aren't used to the real cost of food. They just aren't. They are expecting it to be McDonald's prices for food, and they don't know what real food actually costs. And so you're seeing all kinds of restaurants. Ike's Chili in Tulsa, Oklahoma has been around for 117 years, surviving all kinds of stuff, but already holds an even more complicated challenge, the cost of everything. It's going up. They have to figure out how to manage it. And honestly, I think that you're going to start to see the restaurant business really become one of the most difficult businesses to maintain. What do you guys think? I think it's becoming much more difficult every day. And I certainly encourage those that are doing their best out there to maintain and encourage one another and be a blessing to one another. This is why we need support. This is why we need to stand together. It saddens me when I see businesses fail because their brethren didn't support it. Nobody came out for them, if you will. This is one of the sad realities of our world, the side effects, if you will. So thankfully, we're seeing a lot more people that are awake in this hour, more people that are starting to ask better questions and are looking for genuine connection, not this theatrical pretend fellowship, which is just theatrical. You go sit in a building, you're all facing this way. Nobody even talks to each other, and you hardly know one another, and there's no real connection. That's not the fellowship described in the scripture. It's certainly not the kind of fellowship that survives days like you're seeing in Gaza or in other parts of the world. So you want to be part of a fellowship that's built for disaster, okay? You want to be part of fellowships that's built for difficulty, not a fellowship that only does well during a bake sale. Just saying. Well, that's it for tonight. I pray that this broadcast has been a berachah to you. And I certainly am thankful for every one of you that reach out to us, that connect with us, that make it on over to remnanthouse.org to support this work that we do each week, a labor of love. And we're certainly grateful for those of you that are part of this house. Those that just stop by to visit with us, well, we're grateful that you did. Thank you so much for joining us. Shalom.